My fiancé laughed when the valuation email came through. $500 million? You? The girl who can't even balance a checkbook. He smirked, showing the screen to his friends. Maya thinks she's the next tech billionaire. They all erupted in laughter. Then my phone rang. It was Goldman Sachs. And what happened next reminded me why I should have trusted my instincts about him from the beginning. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. My name is Maya Ashford. I'm 29. And if you think you know how this ends, stay tuned. Have you ever watched someone's face crumble when they realize they've been mocking a miracle? Not because of luck, but because of pure, undeniable success they never saw coming. The air in our shared apartment in downtown Portland felt electric, almost crackling with tension. Derek's jaw had gone slack as his eyes darted between my laptop screen and my face, the numbers refusing to make sense in his narrow worldview. My startup, Quantum Flow AI, had just received its Series C valuation. $500 million. $500 million. The email from Meridian Ventures sat open on my MacBook, the figure glowing like a beacon of vindication. Derek's friends, Brad, Connor, and Jake, had gone silent around our coffee table, their beer bottles frozen halfway to their lips. "This has to be a mistake," Derek said, his voice thin and desperate. "Maya, come on. You've been working on that little app thing for what, 2 years? Real companies they don't become worth this much overnight." His hand gestured wildly at the screen, as if he could wave away the reality of what he was seeing. I looked at him, really looked at him, for the first time in months. This man I'd been planning to marry in 6 weeks. This man who'd spent the last 3 years calling my late nights, playing computer, my investor meetings, cute little presentations, and my vision, adorable but unrealistic. Derek Martinez, 32, senior account manager at a mid-tier marketing firm, pulling in $75,000 a year and treating it like he'd conquered Wall Street. "It's not a mistake," I said quietly, scrolling through the detailed breakdown. Meridian's lead partner, Sarah Chen, has been tracking our user growth for 8 months. We hit 12 million active users last quarter. Our AI-powered financial forecasting tool is being used by 47 Fortune 500 companies. Tesla just signed a 3-year contract with us. Brad leaned forward, squinting at my screen. "Wait, Tesla? Like Elon Musk Tesla?" I nodded. Their CFO called our algorithm revolutionary in last week's earnings call. Said it's helping them predict market fluctuations with 94% accuracy. Derek's face had shifted from disbelief to something uglier, resentment mixed with panic. "Well, it's not like you did this alone. I mean, you've been living here rent-free for 2 years while I supported us. Technically, I'm an investor." The room went dead silent. Even his friends looked uncomfortable. "Rent-free?" I repeated slowly. "Derek, I've been paying 2/3 of our expenses since I moved in. I have the bank statements to prove it." His face flushed red. Look, the point is, we're a team. This is our success." Something cold settled in my chest. Our success. The man who'd rolled his eyes every time I mentioned venture capital. Who'd suggested I get a real job when my first round of funding came through at $50,000. Who'd literally laughed out loud when I quit my corporate position at Intel to pursue Quantum Flow full-time. "Connor," I said, turning to Derek's friend, "didn't you tell me last month that my startup was cute but pointless? That I should focus on having babies instead of a playing entrepreneur?" Connor shifted uncomfortably. "I mean, that was just. I didn't think." "And Jake," I continued, "weren't you the one who said I was delusional for thinking anyone would pay for financial AI? That people would never trust computers with their money?" Jake suddenly found his beer label fascinating. Derek stood up abruptly, pacing to the window. "Okay, fine. Maybe we were skeptical. But that's normal. Most startups fail. We were just being realistic." "Realistic," I repeated. Is that what you call it when you told your mother I was playing pretend CEO at Thanksgiving dinner? When you introduced me to your boss as Maya, she does computer stuff as a hobby? The memory hit fresh. Derek's company Christmas party, 3 months ago. His boss had asked about my work, and Derek had literally patted my head and said, Maya likes to tinker with apps. It's cute, but obviously not serious money. My phone buzzed. A text from Dr. Elizabeth Hawthorne, my mentor from Stanford's computer science program. Maya. Saw the TechCrunch article about your valuation. So proud. You've just become the youngest woman to build a unicorn in AI. The industry is buzzing. TechCrunch article. I quickly Googled quantum flow AI and my breath caught. There it was, published 20 minutes ago. Quantum flow AI achieves unicorn status. 29-year-old CEO Maya Ashford disrupts financial forecasting industry. Derek was reading over my shoulder. Youngest woman to build a unicorn, he read aloud, his voice cracking slightly. Maya, this is actually real, isn't it? I looked up at him, this man who'd spent 3 years making me feel small, making me question my own ambitions, making me believe that maybe I was being unrealistic. This man who'd never once asked about my algorithms, my user acquisition strategy, or my revenue models. Who'd treated my passion like a child's game. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel, it means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Yes, Derek, I said softly. It's real. It was always real. You just never believed in me enough to see it. The silence stretched between us like a chasm. His friends were staring at their phones, probably Googling my company, my name, my net worth. The same people who'd laughed at my computer hobby were now seeing my face on tech blogs, my quotes in Forbes, my company valued higher than most businesses they'd ever heard of. Derek sank back into his chair, his face pale. Maya, I didn't mean. But I was already closing my laptop, my mind crystallizing around a truth I'd been avoiding for months. This wasn't just about the money or the valuation or the validation. This was about respect. This was about someone who claimed to love me but had never once believed I was capable of greatness. And as my phone started ringing with calls from investors, journalists, and industry leaders, I realized something that would change everything. I had never felt more alone in a room full of people, and I had never been more certain that I deserved better. Derek's shock lasted exactly 30 seconds before his defense mechanisms kicked in. He straightened his shoulders, cleared his throat, and did something that made my blood run cold. He smiled. Not a genuine smile, but that condescending smirk I'd seen him use on waiters and customer service representatives. The one that said he was about to explain why everyone else was wrong. Okay, Maya, he said, his voice taking on that patronizing tone I'd grown to hate. Let's be realistic here. A valuation isn't actual money. It's just what some investors think your company might be worth someday. It's not like you can just cash out tomorrow and buy a mansion. Brad nodded eagerly, clearly relieved to have Derek take charge of the narrative. Yeah, exactly. My cousin got his food truck valued at 50 grand, but he's still living in his mom's basement. I stared at Derek, watching him perform this mental gymnastics routine in real time. Here was proof, undeniable, public, verified proof, that I had built something extraordinary, and his first instinct wasn't pride or congratulations. It was to diminish it. Derek, I said slowly, Goldman Sachs doesn't do fantasy valuations. Neither does Meridian Ventures. They've been auditing our books for 6 months. This isn't monopoly money we're talking about. He waved his hand dismissively. Look, I'm happy for you, I really am. But let's not get carried away. You said it yourself, you've been working on this for 2 years. 2 years, Maya. That's a long time to pour into something that might not even exist in 5 years. Remember Theranos? Remember all those .com companies that crashed? Connor jumped in, emboldened by Derek's confidence. Plus, how much of this is actually yours? Don't these venture capital guys take most of the company? You probably own what, 5%? The ignorance was breathtaking. I pulled up my cap table on my phone, the document that showed exactly who owned what percentage of quantum flow AI. I own 43%, I said quietly. 43% of $500 million. The math hung in the air like a sword. Derek's face twitched as he processed the numbers. $215 million. My personal stake was worth more than his entire company's annual revenue. That's... Jake started, then stopped, clearly unable to finish the sentence. That's theoretical, Derek said quickly, though his voice had lost some of its certainty. Paper wealth. It doesn't mean anything until you actually sell the company. And who knows if you'll ever find a buyer at that price. I looked at him, really looked at him, and saw something I'd never noticed before. Fear. Not just surprise or confusion, but genuine terror. Because Derek's entire identity was built on being the successful one in our relationship. He was the one with the real job, the steady paycheck, the understanding of how the adult world worked. I was the dreamer, the idealist, the one who needed his practical guidance to navigate reality. Derek, I said, my voice steady despite the storm building inside me, Microsoft made an acquisition offer last month. For $600 million. The room went dead silent. I turned it down, I continued, because I believe quantum flow is worth more. Sarah Chin agrees. She thinks we'll hit $1 billion valuation within 18 months. Derek's face had gone from pale to gray. You turned down $600 million? Yes. Without discussing it with me? And there it was. The real issue. Not that I had succeeded beyond his wildest imagination, but that I had made major life decisions without seeking his permission. That I had operated as an independent person rather than an extension of his will. Derek, I said carefully, why would I discuss my business decisions with someone who thinks my company is a hobby? He stood up abruptly, pacing to the kitchen. That's not fair, Maya. We're supposed to be partners. We're getting married in 6 weeks. Big decisions like this affect both of us. Partners, I repeated. When have you ever treated me like a partner? You've spent 3 years telling me to be more realistic. You've introduced me as your girlfriend who plays with computers. You've suggested I get a real job approximately once a month for the last 2 years. Brad shifted uncomfortably. Maybe we should go. No, Derek said sharply. Stay. Maya's she's overwhelmed. This is a lot to process. He turned back to me, his voice taking on a fake gentleness that made my skin crawl. Honey, I know you're excited, but you're not thinking clearly. 600 million? And you just said no? Without even considering what that could mean for our future? Our future? I laughed, and it came out harder than I intended. Derek, in our future, who did you think was going to be the breadwinner? He blinked. I mean, we'd both contribute. But you assumed it would be you, right? The man with the real job and the practical mindset. I'd maybe contribute some pin money from my little computer hobby. That's not. Last week, I continued, when we were looking at wedding venues, you told the coordinator that you'd be handling the payments because I was between real jobs. When she asked what I did, you said I was exploring some entrepreneurial options. The memory was sharp and humiliating. The wedding coordinator had nodded politely and directed all further financial questions to Derek, while I sat there like a decorative accessory. Connor cleared his throat. Look, Maya, Derek was just trying to be protective. Guys do that. It doesn't mean he doesn't believe in you. I turned to Connor with genuine curiosity. Protective of what, exactly? My feelings? My reputation? Or his own image as the successful partner? Derek's face was red now, anger mixing with panic. You know what, Maya? Maybe I was protective. Maybe I didn't want to watch you get your hopes up and then crash when reality hit. Do you know how many startups fail? 90%. 90%, Maya. I was trying to save you from disappointment. By making sure I was disappointed in myself first. The question hung between us like a challenge. Derek opened his mouth, then closed it, then opened it again. That's not. I never wanted you to be disappointed in yourself. I just wanted you to have realistic expectations. Realistic expectations, I said, tasting the words. Like expecting my fiancé to celebrate my success instead of explaining why it doesn't count? My phone rang again. Dr. Hawthorne's name flashed on the screen. I answered, putting it on speaker without thinking. Maya, her voice rang out, bright with excitement. I just got off the phone with the dean. Stanford wants to do a case study on quantum flow for our entrepreneurship program. And Bloomberg is asking if you'll do an interview for their Power Players series. This is incredible. The room was silent except for Dr. Hawthorne's enthusiastic voice. Oh, she continued, and I hope you don't mind, but I gave your number to Julia Chen from Forbes. She's working on a piece about young women disrupting traditional industries. Apparently, you're exactly the kind of success story they want to highlight. Thank you, Dr. Hawthorne, I managed. I'll call you back. When I hung up, Derek was staring at me like I'd grown a second head. Bloomberg? Forbes? Maya, this is actually happening, isn't it? I nodded, feeling something shift inside my chest. Something that felt suspiciously like relief. Yeah, Derek, I said quietly. It's actually happening. It was always happening. You just never bothered to notice. The silence stretched for what felt like hours but was probably only 30 seconds. Derek's friends were fidgeting with their phones, and I could practically hear the wheels turning in their heads as they tried to reconcile the woman they dismissed with the headlines they were now reading about me. My phone buzzed with another notification. Then another. The TechCrunch article was being shared across social media, and my LinkedIn was exploding with connection requests and congratulations. Each ping felt like a small victory, a tiny validation that what I'd built mattered to people who understood the industry. Maya Chen, I said slowly, looking directly at Derek, my name is Maya Ashford, and I need you to understand something. For 3 years, you've known exactly who I am and what I'm capable of. You've watched me work 16-hour days. You've seen me pitch to investors, code until 3 in the morning, and build something from absolutely nothing. The only thing that's changed in the last hour is that the rest of the world now sees what was always there. Derek ran his hands through his hair, a gesture I once found endearing but now recognized as his tell when he was losing control of a situation. Maya, that's not fair. Of course I knew you were smart. Of course I knew you were working hard. But this. He gestured helplessly at my laptop, this is different. This is like saying you're going to climb Mount Everest and then actually doing it. No, I said, my voice gaining strength, this is like saying I'm going to climb Mount Everest, showing you my training schedule, my equipment, my route planning, my guide certifications, and then you spending 3 years telling me I should focus on hiking local trails instead. Brad shifted uncomfortably. Look, maybe Derek could have been more supportive, but come on, Maya. You have to admit this is pretty unexpected. Most people would be skeptical. I turned to Brad with genuine curiosity. Would they? Brad, what do you do for work? I'm in pharmaceutical sales. And if you told me you were going to become the top salesperson in your region, would you expect me to laugh at you? To introduce you to people as someone who plays at selling medicine? That's different. How? Because pharmaceutical sales it's an established career path. There are metrics, proven strategies. Brad, I said patiently, I have a computer science degree from Stanford. I graduated summa cum laude. I worked at Intel for 2 years before starting Quantum Flow. I have 3 published papers on machine learning algorithms. My thesis advisor was Dr. Elizabeth Hawthorne, who's been featured on the cover of Wired magazine twice. This isn't a hobby I picked up from YouTube tutorials. The room fell silent again. I could see them processing this information, realizing how little they actually knew about my background, my qualifications, my expertise. Derek had introduced me to his friends as his girlfriend who did computer stuff, never mentioning my education, my previous job, or my actual skills? Connor spoke up hesitantly. I mean, when you put it like that. When I put it like what? Accurately? I asked. With context? With the information Derek had access to for 3 years but chose not to share? Derek's face was flushed now. Maya, that's not. I wasn't hiding anything. I just don't always lead with people's resumes when I introduce them. No, I agreed, but you don't usually undermine them either. Derek, remember when we went to your company's 4th of July barbecue? Your boss asked what I did, and you said I was tinkering with an app. When he asked if it was like Candy Crush, you laughed and said something like that. The memory still stung. Derek's boss had literally patted me on the head and told me it was cute that I was learning to code. I'd stood there, a Stanford graduate with years of professional experience, being treated like a child playing with toys. I was trying to keep it simple, Derek said weakly. Simple, I repeated. Or embarrassing. Were you embarrassed to explain that your girlfriend was building enterprise-level AI software? That I was meeting with venture capitalists and Fortune 500 CTOs? Jake finally spoke up. Wait, you were meeting with Fortune 500 companies? When? For the last 18 months, I said. Every week, sometimes twice a week. Tesla, Microsoft, Apple, Goldman Sachs, JP Morgan. That's how enterprise software sales work, Jake. You don't just build something and hope people find it. You actively pursue partnerships with major corporations. I pulled up my calendar on my phone and showed them the last month's schedule. Meeting after meeting with recognizable company names and impressive job titles. Chief Technology Officers, Vice Presidents of Innovation, Senior Directors of Financial Planning. Holy shit, Brad whispered. Maya, these are real meetings. With real companies. Yes, Brad. They're real meetings. With real decision makers who paid real money for real software that solves real problems. I was getting tired of having to prove that my professional life existed. Derek, you knew about these meetings. I told you about them every single time. Derek shifted uncomfortably. I mean, you mentioned meetings, but you never really explained who they were with or how important they were. Because every time I tried to explain, you changed the subject. Remember when I came home excited about the Tesla contract? I wanted to tell you all the details, and you said, that's nice, honey, but can we talk about something more relatable? I had a rough day at work. The memory hit him visibly. I could see it in his face, the recognition of that moment and probably dozens of others like it. Moments when he dismissed my excitement, redirected my enthusiasm, or simply refused to engage with the reality of what I was building. I didn't realize. He started. You didn't realize because you didn't want to realize, I interrupted. Derek, if I had gotten a promotion at Intel, you would have asked about my new salary, my responsibilities, my career trajectory. You would have wanted to understand exactly what it meant for our future. But because I was building my own company, you treated it like a hobby. Like something that didn't require your attention or respect. Connor was scrolling through his phone. Guys, Maya's company is trending on Twitter. There are like 20 articles about this valuation just from today. He held up his phone, showing a Twitter thread from a prominent tech journalist. Maya Ashford is exactly the kind of founder we need more of in AI. Technical expertise, clear vision, proven execution. Quantum Flow's trajectory from startup to unicorn is a masterclass in strategic growth. Another notification. This time it was a text from my attorney, David Kim. Maya, congratulations. I've been fielding calls all day. 3 more acquisition offers came in this afternoon. Also, Sequoia Capital wants to lead your Series D. We need to talk. I read the message aloud, watching Derek's face cycle through emotions I couldn't quite identify. Shock, definitely. Maybe some pride. But underneath it all, something that looked suspiciously like resentment. Series D? Jake asked. What does that mean? It means more funding, I explained. Series A is typically the first major round of professional investment. Series B is growth funding. Series C, which we just completed, is expansion funding. Series D usually happens when a company is preparing for an IPO or major acquisition. IPO, Brad repeated slowly. Like, going public? Like Apple or Google? That's the goal, I said simply. Derek stood up abruptly and walked to the window, his back to all of us. An IPO, he said quietly. Maya, do you understand what you're talking about? Do you understand what this means? I looked at his rigid shoulders, the tension in his posture, and realized something that made my stomach drop. Derek wasn't struggling to understand my success. He was struggling to accept it. Because my success didn't just change our financial situation, it changed our entire dynamic. It changed who we were to each other and to the world. Yes, Derek, I said softly. I understand exactly what this means. And for the first time since the valuation email arrived, I think I finally understood what it meant for us. Derek turned around from the window, and I saw something in his expression that I'd never seen before, not just confusion or surprise, but genuine fear. His usual confident demeanor had cracked, revealing something raw and desperate underneath. Maya, he said, his voice taking on a tone I recognized from our worst arguments, we need to talk about this rationally. I mean, really think about what you're saying. IPO? Going public? Do you have any idea what that kind of pressure looks like? What that kind of scrutiny does to people? His friends exchanged glances, sensing the shift in Derek's energy. The playful skepticism from earlier had morphed into something sharper, more defensive. I've been researching this stuff, Derek continued, pulling out his phone. Do you know what percentage of tech CEOs burn out within 5 years of going public? Do you know how many relationships get destroyed by that kind of stress? I stared at him, processing what was happening. Less than an hour ago, he'd been mocking my computer hobby. Now he was suddenly an expert on the psychological toll of running a public company. Derek, I said carefully, are you concerned about my well-being, or are you trying to talk me out of success? I'm concerned about us, he shot back. About what this is going to do to our relationship, our marriage, our life together. Maya, you're talking about becoming one of those workaholic CEOs who live at the office and never see their families. Connor nodded emphatically. Derek's got a point. My uncle worked for a tech startup that got acquired, and the founder ended up divorced within 2 years. Money changes people. I felt something cold settle in my chest. Money changes people, I repeated slowly. Connor, I've been building this company for 2 years. In that time, have I changed? Have I become a different person? He shifted uncomfortably. Well, no, but that was before the real money. Before the pressure. The pressure, I said. You mean the pressure of having my work validated? Of having my vision proven correct? Of achieving something I've been working toward for years? Derek stepped closer, his voice dropping to that intimate tone he used when he wanted to convince me of something. Baby, I know you're excited, and you should be. This is amazing. But we need to be smart about this. We need to think about what really matters. There it was again. That word. We. What really matters to you, Derek? I asked. Our relationship. Our future together. Starting a family. He reached for my hands, but I pulled them back. Maya, we've been planning our wedding for 8 months. We've talked about buying a house, having kids. Are you really going to throw all that away to chase some fantasy of being the next Steve Jobs? The room went silent. Brad and Connor were staring at their phones, clearly uncomfortable with the direction this conversation was taking. Jake was looking back and forth between Derek and me like he was watching a tennis match. Fantasy, I said quietly. Derek, 3 hours ago, you called my company a fantasy. Now that it's been valued at $500 million, you're calling my career aspirations a fantasy. Do you see a pattern here? That's not what I meant. Then what did you mean? I stood up, my voice getting stronger. Because it sounds like you're saying that anything I want that doesn't center around you and your vision of our life together is a fantasy. Derek's face flushed red. That's not fair, Maya. Of course I want you to be successful. But success doesn't have to mean choosing work over family. It doesn't have to mean becoming one of those power-hungry executives who sacrifice everything for money. Power-hungry, I repeated. Derek, do you know what quantum flow actually does? He blinked. It's financial software. It's an AI system that helps people make better financial decisions. It helps families avoid bankruptcy. It helps small businesses predict cash flow problems before they become disasters. It helps retirement funds make smarter investments so people can actually afford to retire. My voice was getting louder now. Last month, our software helped a community bank in rural Oregon avoid a predatory lending scheme that would have cost their customers millions. But sure, Derek. I'm just power hungry. Connor looked up from his phone. Holy shit, Maya. I just read this article. Your software helped expose that whole Meridian financial scandal last year? I nodded. Our algorithms detected unusual patterns in their trading data. We flagged it to the SEC. That's... Jake started, then stopped. That's actually really important work. Derek's jaw tightened. Okay, fine. You're doing important work. But that doesn't change the fact that you're talking about completely restructuring our entire life without consulting me. We're supposed to be partners, Maya. Partners make big decisions together. Partners, I said, the word tasting bitter in my mouth. Derek, when did you last ask me about a major decision in your life? What do you mean? I mean, when did you last treat me like a partner whose opinion mattered? When you took that promotion last year, did you consult me? When you decided to lease that expensive car, did you ask what I thought? When you put the deposit down on that wedding venue without telling me the price first? His face went pale. Those are different. How are they different? Because those are normal life decisions. Career moves, transportation, wedding planning. You're talking about becoming a public figure. About media interviews and board meetings and traveling constantly. You're talking about becoming someone completely different. I stared at him, finally understanding what was really happening. Derek, I'm not talking about becoming someone different. I'm talking about becoming more myself. The person I always was, but that you never wanted to see. Brad cleared his throat awkwardly. Maybe we should give you guys some privacy. No, Derek said sharply. Stay. I want witnesses to this conversation. He turned back to me, his voice taking on an edge I'd never heard before. Maya, let's be honest about what's really happening here. 6 months ago, you were a struggling startup founder burning through savings and living off my income. Now, suddenly, you're worth hundreds of millions of dollars, and you're acting like you don't need me anymore. The accusation hung in the air like a slap. Living off your income? I said quietly. Derek, I've been paying 2/3 of our expenses for the last year. I can show you the bank statements. That's not the point. Then what is the point? My voice was rising again. Because it sounds like you're saying that the only version of me you're comfortable with is the one that needed you. The one that was struggling. The one that you could protect and guide and condescend to. Connor was scrolling frantically through his phone. Guys, this is getting really intense. Maybe. Derek, I continued, ignoring Connor entirely, do you remember what you said to me last month when I was stressed about the Series C negotiations? He didn't answer. You said, maybe this is a sign that you're not cut out for this level of business. Maybe it's time to consider going back to a regular job. The memory was crystal clear, painful in its precision. You suggested I interview at your company. As a junior developer. Reporting to your friend Marcus. Jake winced. Dude. I was trying to help, Derek said defensively. You were stressed, you were working too much, you weren't sleeping. I thought maybe a stable job with regular hours would be better for your health. Or better for your ego, I said quietly. The words fell between us like stones. Derek's friends were openly staring now, the pretense of casual conversation completely abandoned. That's... Derek started, then stopped. Maya, that's a terrible thing to say. Is it? I asked. Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you were perfectly happy to support my dreams right up until they became bigger than yours. You were fine with my little startup as long as it stayed little. As long as it stayed smaller than your career, your salary, your importance in our relationship. My phone buzzed again. Another text, this time from my publicist Sarah Martinez. Maya, CNN wants you for their Tech Leaders segment tomorrow morning. Also, the White House Office of Science and Technology Policy wants to discuss your AI ethics framework. Call me when you can. I read the message aloud, watching Derek's face cycle through emotions like a slot machine. When I finished, the room was dead silent. The White House? Brad whispered. I nodded, feeling surreal. We've been working with their Technology Advisory Board on responsible AI development standards. Derek sat down heavily in his chair, his head in his hands. When he looked up, his eyes were red. Maya, he said quietly, I don't know how to be the boyfriend of someone who gets calls from the White House. And there it was. Finally. The truth we'd been dancing around for the last hour. Derek, I said softly, I don't know how to be the girlfriend of someone who doesn't want me to get calls from the White House. The silence that followed my words was deafening. Derek's friends were no longer pretending to scroll through their phones. They were openly staring at us, witnessing what felt like the slow-motion collapse of a 3-year relationship. Derek himself looked like he'd been physically struck, his face cycling between hurt and anger and something that looked disturbingly like betrayal. So that's it, he said finally, his voice barely above a whisper. 3 years together, and you're just going to throw it all away because I'm not excited enough about your success? I felt something inside me break, not from sadness, but from clarity. Derek, this isn't about excitement. This is about respect. This is about whether you can love the person I actually am instead of the person you wanted me to be. Before he could respond, my phone rang. The caller ID showed a number I didn't recognize, but the area code was Silicon Valley. I almost declined it, but something made me answer. Maya Ashford speaking. Ms. Ashford, this is Jonathan Rivera from TechCrunch. I know this is short notice, but we'd love to get a quote from you about the Microsoft acquisition rumors. Our sources are saying they're preparing a counteroffer to your Series C valuation. I blinked. I'm sorry, what acquisition rumors? You haven't seen the Bloomberg article? It posted about 20 minutes ago. They're reporting that Microsoft is preparing a formal acquisition offer for Quantum Flow, potentially in the $800 million to $1 billion range. The room spun slightly. $800 million to $1 billion. I looked at Derek, whose face had gone completely white. He could obviously hear both sides of the conversation. Mr. Rivera, I'm going to have to call you back. I need to speak with my team first. Of course. We'll hold the story until we hear from you. I hung up and immediately called David Kim, my attorney. He picked up on the first ring. Maya, I was just about to call you. We need to talk. Now. David, what's this about Microsoft making a new offer? Where are you right now? Are you somewhere private? I looked around the room at Derek and his 3 friends, all staring at me with expressions ranging from shock to something approaching awe. Not exactly. Can you be? Because we need to discuss some numbers that are going to change your life. My hands were shaking as I stood up. Derek, I need to take this call privately. He nodded wordlessly, still looking stunned. I walked into our bedroom and closed the door. Okay, David. I'm alone. Maya, Microsoft isn't just making an offer. They're making an offer that's unprecedented for a company your size. Satya Nadella himself was on the call with our team an hour ago. They want Quantum Flow's AI technology to be the backbone of their entire financial services division. I sat down hard on the bed. David, what are the numbers? They're starting at $1.2 billion. The words hit me like a physical force. $1.2 billion. My 43% stake would be worth. I couldn't even do the math in my head. Maya? Are you there? I'm here, I managed. David, that's life-changing money. Not just for you, but for everyone on your team. Your early employees would become millionaires overnight. Your Series A investors would see returns that venture capital firms dream about. I thought about Jenny Martinez, my lead developer, who'd been with me since the beginning when we were working out of a coffee shop in downtown Portland. About Marcus Thompson, my head of sales, who'd taken a 60% pay cut to join Quantum Flow when we couldn't afford market rate salaries. About Dr. Rebecca Liu, our AI ethics specialist, who'd left Google to join our mission of responsible financial technology. But here's the thing, Maya, David continued. They don't just want to buy the company. They want you to stay on as division head. They're offering you a 5-year contract with a guaranteed salary that's, well, it's more than most CEOs make at Fortune 500 companies. My head was spinning. How much more? $15 million a year, plus equity in Microsoft, plus performance bonuses that could double that. I lay back on the bed, staring at the ceiling. $15 million a year. For 5 years. Plus bonuses. Plus Microsoft stock options. The numbers were so large they felt abstract, like we were discussing the federal budget rather than my personal income. David, I need time to think about this. Of course. But Maya, there's one more thing. This isn't going to stay quiet. Bloomberg already has the story. By tomorrow morning, every tech publication in the world is going to be covering this. Your life is about to change in ways you can't imagine. After I hung up, I sat in the bedroom for a long time, trying to process what had just happened. An hour ago, I'd been celebrating a $500 million valuation. Now I was looking at an offer that was more than double that, plus a personal employment contract that would make me one of the highest paid executives in tech. When I finally emerged from the bedroom, I found Derek pacing the living room while his friends huddled together on the couch, whispering urgently among themselves. The energy in the room had shifted completely. The casual dismissiveness from earlier had been replaced by something that felt almost like reverence. Maya, Derek said as soon as he saw me, we need to talk. Really talk. I nodded and sat down across from him. His friends started to get up, but he waved them back down. Stay, he said. I want you to hear this too. He turned to me, his expression more serious than I'd ever seen it. Maya, I owe you an apology. A real one. Not for being skeptical, but for being small. For trying to make you small. Connor shifted uncomfortably. Derek, man, maybe this should be private. No, Derek said firmly. They need to hear this too. Because they were part of it. We all were. He looked at each of his friends in turn. Maya, we've been treating you like you were playing dress up as an entrepreneur. Like you were some kind of imposter who didn't understand how the real world worked. Brad opened his mouth to protest, but Derek held up his hand. I'm not done, Derek continued. Maya, when you told me about your meetings with Fortune 500 companies, I didn't believe you. When you talked about your AI algorithms, I thought you were overselling basic software. When you said you were building something revolutionary, I thought you were being naive. He ran his hands through his hair, that familiar gesture now seeming more like distress than annoyance. But the truth is, I wasn't protecting you from disappointment. I was protecting myself from feeling inadequate. Because if you were really building what you said you were building, if you were really as brilliant as you obviously are, then what did that make me? The vulnerability in his voice was unlike anything I'd heard from him before. His friends were staring at him with a mixture of surprise and discomfort, clearly not used to seeing Derek in anything other than complete control. Maya, he continued, you're about to become one of the most powerful women in tech. You're going to be on magazine covers and giving keynote speeches and advising the government on AI policy. And I'm a mid-level marketing manager who makes $75,000 a year and whose biggest professional achievement is landing the Henderson Electronics account. Jake started to say something supportive, but Derek cut him off. I know what you're going to say. That my job is important too, that not everyone can be a tech billionaire, that there's nothing wrong with being ordinary. And you're right. There isn't anything wrong with being ordinary. But there is something wrong with trying to force extraordinary people to be ordinary just to make yourself feel better. I stared at him, seeing him clearly for perhaps the first time in our entire relationship. This wasn't just an apology, it was a confession. A recognition of something that had been poisoning us from the beginning. Derek, I said softly, are you saying this because you're genuinely sorry, or because the numbers got too big to ignore? He was quiet for a long moment, really considering the question. Both, he said finally. And I hate that it took proof this undeniable for me to see what should have been obvious all along. The honesty was devastating. And somehow, it made everything that came next inevitable. Derek's admission hung in the air like smoke, thick and choking. I could see his friends processing what he'd just said, the uncomfortable realization that they'd all been complicit in something ugly. But before anyone could respond, my phone started ringing again. This time, it was Dr. Hawthorne. Maya, I hope you don't mind me calling, but I just got off the phone with someone from the National Science Foundation. They want to discuss your AI ethics framework for a potential federal implementation. This is unprecedented for someone your age. I could feel Derek's eyes on me as I took the call. Dr. Hawthorne, can I call you back? I'm in the middle of something important. Of course, but Maya? Don't let anyone make you feel small about this. What you've accomplished is extraordinary, and you deserve every bit of recognition coming your way. After I hung up, Connor was the first to speak. Maya, I owe you an apology too. We all do. I don't think any of us understood what you were actually doing. Brad nodded emphatically. When Derek said you were working on an app, I pictured I don't know, something for ordering food or sharing photos. I had no idea you were building enterprise software for major corporations. That's because Derek never told you, I said quietly. In 3 years, Derek, you never once accurately described my work to anyone. Not to your friends, not to your family, not to your coworkers. Why is that? Derek's face crumpled slightly. Because I didn't understand it myself. And I was too proud to admit that my girlfriend knew things I didn't. That she was operating in a world I couldn't even comprehend. Jake leaned forward. But Maya, you never corrected us. When we made jokes about your computer hobby, you just smiled and let it slide. Why didn't you ever speak up? The question hit me unexpectedly hard. Because I loved him, I said simply. And I thought that if I just kept proving myself, kept achieving more, kept being successful, eventually Derek would see me the way I needed to be seen. I thought love meant not making the person you care about feel uncomfortable about their insecurities. But that's not love, Connor said quietly. That's something else. Before anyone could respond, there was a sharp knock at the door. Derek frowned. Were you expecting someone? I shook my head, but something in my stomach told me I knew who it was. I opened the door to find 2 people I'd never seen before, a middle-aged woman in an expensive suit and a younger man with a camera. Ms. Ashford? I'm Jennifer Walsh from Business Weekly. We were hoping to get a few words about the Microsoft acquisition rumors. My blood ran cold. How did you get my address? Public records, the man with the camera said cheerfully. Mind if we get a quick photo? Our readers would love to see the woman behind Quantum Flow AI. Derek appeared behind me, his face pale. Maya, who are these people? Journalists, I said, feeling surreal. They want to interview me about Microsoft. Jennifer Walsh's eyes lit up. Oh, are you the fiancé? Derek Martinez, right? We'd love to get your perspective on what it's like to be engaged to one of tech's rising stars. Derek looked like he'd been slapped. How do you know my name? We do our research, she said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. So, Derek, tell us, what's it like watching your fiancé become a billionaire? I stepped between them and Derek. I'm sorry, but this isn't a good time. If you want to schedule an interview, you can contact my publicist. We'll just take a minute, the photographer said, raising his camera. The public is fascinated by power couples in tech. No photos, I said firmly, starting to close the door. Jennifer Walsh put her foot in the doorway. Ms. Ashford, our sources say Microsoft's offer could be worth over $1 billion. That would make you one of the youngest self-made billionaires in history. Surely you have some comment on that? Behind me, I heard Jake whisper, did she just say billionaire? I managed to close the door, but my hands were shaking. Through the window, I could see Jennifer Walsh and her photographer setting up on the sidewalk, clearly planning to wait. Maya, Derek said, his voice strange and hollow, there are reporters outside our apartment. I nodded, trying to process this new reality. David warned me this might happen. When stories this big break, the media attention can be intense. Brad was staring out the window. There's a news van pulling up. And another car with press plates. Within 10 minutes, there were 6 vehicles parked outside our building. I could see reporters with microphones and camera crews setting up equipment. Neighbors were starting to come out, curious about the commotion. This is insane, Connor breathed. Maya, this is actually insane. My phone was ringing constantly now. Calls from reporters, producers, even a few numbers I recognized as major talk shows. I turned it on silent, but the notifications kept flashing. Derek sat down heavily on the couch. Maya, what happens now? I mean, what happens to us? To our life here? I looked around our apartment, our modest 2-bedroom in a decent but unremarkable neighborhood in Portland. The place where we'd planned to live as newlyweds, where we'd talked about starting a family, where Derek had always been the one with the stable income and the practical life plan. I don't know, I said honestly. Derek, I've never dealt with anything like this before. But you're going to have to, aren't you? He said quietly. This is your life now. Press conferences and media interviews and security details. Jake looked up from his phone. Security details? Jake, I said carefully, when you become worth $1 billion, personal security becomes a necessity. There are people who target wealthy individuals for kidnapping, extortion, all kinds of threats. The room fell silent as that reality sank in. This wasn't just about money or career success anymore. This was about a fundamental change in how I would have to live my life. Derek's phone buzzed. He looked at it and his face went white. Maya, my boss just texted me. He saw the news. He wants to know if I can set up a meeting between you and our biggest client. More reality settling in. Derek's professional life was about to be defined by his connection to me, rather than his own abilities. There's more, Derek continued, scrolling through his messages. My mom wants to know if we're still having the wedding. My sister wants to know if I can get her a job at your company. My college roommate just texted asking if I can invest in his startup. Connor nodded grimly. Yeah, I just got 3 messages from people I haven't talked to in years. Apparently, everyone wants to be best friends with Derek now. I felt something heavy settle in my chest. Derek, this is going to get worse before it gets better. When the Microsoft deal is officially announced, when I sign whatever contract I'm going to sign, the attention is going to be overwhelming. And you're going to have to handle it alone, he said. It wasn't a question. What do you mean? Derek gestured helplessly around the room. Maya, look at me. Look at my friends. We're not equipped for this world you're entering. We don't know how to talk to reporters or attend charity galas or whatever it is that billionaires do with their time. Brad laughed bitterly. Dude, I get nervous ordering wine at nice restaurants. I can't imagine going to the kind of events Maya's going to be invited to. That's not. I started, then stopped. Because they were right. The world I was entering, board meetings with Fortune 500 CEOs, technology conferences with global leaders, policy discussions with government officials, it was a world that Derek and his friends had never experienced and might never feel comfortable in. Maya, Derek said softly, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest. I nodded. If we got married next month as planned, would you be happy? Really happy? Or would you spend the rest of our marriage feeling like you had to hide parts of yourself to make me comfortable? The question hit me like a physical blow, because I knew the answer immediately. Derek. That's what I thought, he said, his voice breaking slightly. Maya, I love you. I've loved you for 3 years. But I don't think I love the person you're about to become, and I don't think you should have to be smaller just to stay with me. Outside, I could hear reporters talking, their voices carrying through the windows. Someone was doing a live broadcast, describing our building, probably speculating about our relationship, turning our private moment into public entertainment. So what happens now? I asked. Derek looked around the room at his friends, then back at me. Now I do something I should have done a long time ago, he said. I step aside and let you become who you're meant to be. And with those words, I realized that everything was about to change in ways I'd never imagined. Derek's words settled over the room like a funeral shroud. His friends shifted uncomfortably, clearly unsure whether they should leave or stay for what was obviously becoming a very private conversation. Outside, the crowd of reporters was growing larger, their voices a constant reminder that our private crisis was about to become public entertainment. Derek, I said quietly, are you breaking up with me? He was quiet for a long moment, staring at his hands. Maya, I'm trying to do the right thing for both of us. And I think the right thing is admitting that I'm not the man you need me to be. Before I could respond, my phone rang again. This time it was Sarah Martinez, my publicist. Maya, where are you? CNN is asking for a live interview in 30 minutes. And I've got calls from Good Morning America, The Today Show, and 60 Minutes. We need to get you somewhere safe where we can control the media access. I looked around the room, at Derek's devastated face, at his friends who were trying to disappear into the furniture, at the windows where I could see camera flashes going off. Sarah, I'm at home, but there are reporters everywhere. I can't leave without it turning into a circus. I'm sending a car. Black SUV with tinted windows. It'll be there in 10 minutes. Pack a bag, you're not going back there for a while. After I hung up, Derek looked at me with something that might have been relief. You're leaving. Just for a few days. Until the media attention dies down. I paused. Derek, we don't have to make any permanent decisions right now. We're both in shock. Maybe we should. Maya, he interrupted gently, look around this room. Really look. I did. Brad was scrolling through his phone, showing Connor and Jake articles about me with a mixture of fascination and discomfort. They were talking in hushed tones about my net worth, my potential earnings, the kind of life I was about to lead. They weren't talking to me, they were talking about me, like I was already a celebrity rather than a person they'd known for 3 years. This is what it's going to be like everywhere now, Derek said. People are going to look at you and see dollar signs, opportunities, connections. They're going to want things from you that they never wanted before. Jake looked up from his phone. Maya, this article says you'll probably be invited to the Met Gala next year. The Met Gala. Do you know how insane that is? And the White House, Connor added. You said they want to discuss AI policy with you. Maya, you're going to be advising the government. Brad was shaking his head in disbelief. I keep reading these articles, and I can't reconcile them with the Maya I thought I knew. You're going to be on Forbes covers. You're going to be speaking at TED Talks. You're going to be famous, Derek finished quietly. Maya, you're going to be famous. Really, genuinely famous. And I'm going to be Derek Martinez, whose only claim to significance is that he used to date you. The truth of it hit me like a slap. Derek wasn't just talking about our relationship, he was talking about his entire identity. For 3 years, he'd been the successful one, the practical one, the one who understood how the real world worked. Now, suddenly, I was the one with global recognition, financial power, and influence that extended far beyond anything he'd ever imagined. Maybe that doesn't have to be a bad thing, I said weakly. Connor laughed, but there was no humor in it. Maya, my girlfriend is going to Google you and find out that I'm friends with a billionaire. Every conversation I have for the rest of my life is going to include the question, wait, you know Maya Ashford? Can you introduce me? Same here, Brad agreed. This is going to define all of us now. We're going to be Maya's ex-fiancé's friends forever. I looked at Derek, seeing the weight of this realization settling on his shoulders. Derek, I never wanted this to happen. I never wanted my success to make you feel diminished. I know, he said sadly. But that's exactly what's happening, isn't it? And it's not your fault, but it's not something either of us can fix. My phone buzzed with a text from Sarah. Car is outside. Back entrance of your building. Move now before the reporters notice. I stood up, feeling like I was moving through water. I have to go. Derek nodded. I know. I went to the bedroom and quickly packed a bag, my hands shaking as I threw clothes and toiletries into a suitcase. When I came back out, Derek was standing by the window, watching the reporters below. Maya, he said without turning around, there's something I need to tell you. Something I should have told you a long time ago. I waited. I was jealous, he said quietly. From the beginning. When you first started talking about quantum flow, when you first got that initial funding, when you started having those meetings with investors. I was jealous of your passion, your intelligence, your vision. You had something I'd never had, a purpose that was bigger than just paying bills and getting promotions. His voice cracked slightly. And instead of celebrating that, instead of supporting you, I tried to diminish it. I tried to make you smaller so I could feel bigger. And now. He gestured at the chaos outside. Now you're everything I was afraid you'd become. I walked over to him, placing my hand on his shoulder. Derek, what was I supposed to do? Stop trying? Stop building? Stop believing in myself just to preserve your ego? No, he said immediately. God, no. Maya, you should never have stopped. You should never have been smaller for anyone, especially not for me. He turned to face me, tears in his eyes. But I should have been better. I should have been the man who celebrated your success instead of feeling threatened by it. Jake cleared his throat. Guys, I hate to interrupt, but there are like 20 reporters out there now, and some of them are starting to walk around the building. Maya, if you're going to leave, you should probably do it soon. I looked around the room one more time, at the apartment where Derek and I had planned our future, at his friends who were struggling to process my transformation from Derek's girlfriend who does computer stuff, to tech billionaire, at Derek himself, who looked like he was grieving the death of the life we'd imagined together. Derek, I said softly, what happens to us now? He smiled sadly. Now you go become extraordinary, and I figure out how to be ordinary without resenting you for being everything I'm not. Connor stood up suddenly. Wait. Maya, before you go, I need to say something. I looked at him, surprised. I was wrong about you. We all were. But more than that. He paused, struggling with the words. Watching you handle all of this today, seeing how you've responded to our skepticism and Derek's fears and the media circus outside, you've been gracious and patient and kind. You've been more mature about this situation than any of us have been. Brad nodded. Connor's right. Maya, you could have thrown Derek's words back in his face. You could have made us feel stupid for not taking you seriously. But you didn't. You've been really decent about all of this. And that tells me something, Jake added. It tells me that the success isn't going to change who you are. You're going to handle being a billionaire the same way you handled being underestimated, with class. I felt tears prick at my eyes. Thank you. That means more than you know. My phone buzzed again. Sarah, texting urgently, Maya, now. The crowd is getting bigger and someone tipped off TMZ. We need to move. I looked at Derek one last time. I love you, I said. Whatever happens next, I need you to know that I love you. I love you too, he replied. And that's why I'm letting you go. I picked up my suitcase and headed for the back door, leaving behind not just an apartment, but an entire version of myself, the Maya who had been content to be underestimated, who had accepted being diminished, who had believed that love meant making herself smaller. As I slipped out the back entrance and into the waiting SUV, I realized that Derek was right about one thing: everything was about to change. But for the first time in years, I wasn't afraid of that change. I was ready for it. The SUV pulled away from my building just as I saw the first TMZ van rounding the corner. Through the tinted windows, I watched the media circus that my life had become in the span of a single afternoon. Sarah Martinez was in the passenger seat, already on her phone coordinating what she called crisis management, though I wasn't sure if this qualified as a crisis or just the new reality. "Maya, we're taking you to the Four Seasons downtown," Sarah said, covering her phone. "I've booked the penthouse suite under an assumed name. Security is already in place, and we've arranged a private entrance through the parking garage." I nodded, still feeling surreal. 6 hours ago, I'd been celebrating a business milestone with my fiancé. Now I was being smuggled into a luxury hotel to avoid paparazzi. "Sarah," I said as she finished her call, "how bad is this going to get?" She turned around to face me, her expression serious. "Maya, you need to understand something. As of 2 hours ago, when the Bloomberg story broke about Microsoft's acquisition offer, you became one of the most talked about people in America. #Maya Ashford is trending on Twitter. Your Wikipedia page has been created and updated 17 times since noon. There are already 3 unauthorized biographies being pitched to publishers." My phone, which I'd been ignoring for the last 20 minutes, showed 47 missed calls and 312 unread text messages. "The good news," Sarah continued, "is that the coverage is overwhelmingly positive. You're being called a tech visionary, a role model for women in STEM, an example of American innovation. The bad news is that positive attention is still attention, and attention at this level comes with serious complications." We pulled into the Four Seasons parking garage, where 2 security guards were waiting to escort us to a private elevator. As we rode up to the penthouse, Sarah briefed me on what the next 48 hours would look like. "CNN wants you for their Tech Leaders segment tomorrow morning. Good Morning America is offering their full hour. 60 Minutes wants to do a deep dive on quantum flow's impact on financial markets. And that's just traditional media. Every major tech podcast, YouTube channel, and industry publication is requesting interviews." The elevator opened directly into the penthouse suite. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of Portland, and I could see news vans positioned outside my apartment building from 12 stories up. "There's more," Sarah said as we settled into the living area. "Your LinkedIn profile gained 50,000 followers in the last 3 hours. Your old Stanford professors are getting interview requests. Someone found your high school yearbook photo and it's being shared on social media. Your parents' house in Sacramento has reporters parked outside." My stomach dropped. "My parents?" "Sarah, my dad is a retired teacher and my mom works at a library. They don't know how to handle this kind of attention. I've already arranged security for them," she said quickly. "And we need to prep them for media interviews. They're going to be asked about your childhood, your early interest in technology, what you were like growing up." I sank into the couch, overwhelmed. This is insane. All I did was build software that helps people make better financial decisions. How did that turn into this? Sarah sat across from me, her expression sympathetic but professional. "Maya, you didn't just build software. You built a unicorn company that's revolutionizing an entire industry. You're 29 years old, you're about to become a billionaire, and you're doing it in a field that's traditionally dominated by men. That's not just a business story, that's a cultural phenomenon." My phone rang. David Kim, my attorney. "Maya, we need to talk. Microsoft isn't the only company making offers now. Google just called. So did Amazon. And Apple." I put him on speaker. "David, what are you saying?" "I'm saying that the publicity around the Microsoft offer has triggered a bidding war. Google is talking about $1.5 billion. Amazon is hinting at even more. Maya, we might be looking at the largest AI acquisition in history. Sarah's eyes went wide. I felt like I was floating outside my own body. David, how is this even possible? This morning, Quantum Flow was worth 500 million. Now you're talking about offers that are 3 times that amount? Maya, that's how the tech industry works when you have something truly revolutionary. Once the market realizes what you've built, once they see other major players making serious offers, the value can skyrocket overnight. Especially when you have the kind of media attention that's currently focused on you. After I hung up with David, Sarah was quiet for a long moment. Maya, she said finally, I need to ask you something, and I need you to think carefully before you answer. I nodded. What do you want your life to look like? Not your business, not your career, your actual life. Because the decisions you make in the next week are going to determine whether you're a private person who happens to be wealthy, or a public figure whose every move is scrutinized by the media. I walked to the windows, looking out at the city where I'd spent the last 3 years building Quantum Flow. Down there somewhere, Derek was probably still in our apartment, trying to process the end of our relationship and the beginning of my transformation into someone he no longer recognized. I don't know, I said honestly. Sarah, a week ago, my biggest worry was whether Derek and I could afford the wedding venue we wanted. Now I'm being offered enough money to buy the hotel that venue is in. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Maya, this is Rebecca Chen from The Ellen Show. We'd love to have you on as a guest. Ellen is a huge supporter of women in tech and would love to celebrate your success. Ellen wants me on her show, I said, showing Sarah the text. Sarah smiled. Maya, that's actually perfect. Ellen's audience loves success stories, especially women breaking barriers. It would be a friendly, supportive interview that could help control the narrative around your story. Another text, this one from Dr. Hawthorne. Maya, I just got a call from the MacArthur Foundation. They want to discuss your eligibility for a Genius Grant. This is unprecedented for someone in the private sector. The MacArthur Foundation, I read aloud. Sarah, what's a Genius Grant? It's one of the most prestigious awards in America, she said, her voice full of awe. They give them to people who show exceptional creativity and potential for future contribution. Maya, if you received a MacArthur Fellowship, you'd be in the company of Nobel laureates, acclaimed artists, groundbreaking scientists. It's not about money, it's about recognition as one of the most innovative minds in the country. I sat down heavily, trying to process the scale of what was happening. This wasn't just about business success anymore. This was about being recognized as a thought leader, an innovator, someone whose work could influence policy and culture on a national level. Sarah, I need to ask you something. Have you ever managed someone who went through this kind of transformation? From unknown to, whatever this is? She nodded. A few times. And Maya, I need to be honest with you. The clients who handled it best were the ones who decided early on what their values were and stuck to them, no matter how much external pressure they faced. The ones who struggled were the ones who tried to be everything to everyone. I thought about Derek's words, about how I was going to become someone he didn't recognize. But as I looked around the penthouse suite, as I processed the incredible opportunities that were suddenly available to me, I realized something important. I wasn't becoming someone different. I was finally becoming fully myself. Sarah, I said, I want to use this platform responsibly. I want to advocate for women in tech, for ethical AI development, for policies that help entrepreneurs from all backgrounds succeed. But I also want to maintain some semblance of a private life. She smiled. That's exactly what I hoped you'd say. Maya, we can make this work. But it's going to require careful planning, strong boundaries, and the understanding that your life is never going to be what you thought it would be. My phone rang again. This time, it was my mother. Maya, honey, there are reporters at our front door asking about your potty training. What on earth is going on? And despite everything, the media circus, the end of my relationship, the staggering business offers, I started laughing. Because some things, at least, would never change. After I finished explaining the situation to my bewildered mother and arranged for additional security at my parents' house, Sarah handed me a tablet with what she called the media strategy. Maya, we need to get ahead of this story before someone else defines it for you, she said, scrolling through a detailed timeline. Right now, the narrative is positive. Brilliant young woman builds revolutionary company, proves skeptics wrong. But narratives can shift quickly if we're not careful. I looked at the proposed schedule. CNN at 8 a.m., followed by a TechCrunch interview, then a conference call with 3 different venture capital firms who wanted to discuss strategic partnerships. The day after that was even more packed. Sarah, this looks like I'd be doing interviews from dawn to dusk for the next 2 weeks. That's because everyone wants to be first, she explained. The challenge is choosing the right platforms to tell your story the way you want it told. Before I could respond, my phone rang. David Kim again. Maya, we have a problem. Well, not a problem exactly, but a complication. What kind of complication? Derek is getting interview requests. My stomach dropped. What do you mean? Reporters are calling him directly. They want the inside story on your relationship, your engagement, what it's like to be romantically involved with a tech billionaire. Someone from Entertainment Tonight called him an hour ago. I closed my eyes, imagining Derek fielding calls from tabloid reporters. Derek doesn't know how to handle media attention. He's never been trained for this kind of thing. That's why I'm calling. Maya, you need to think about whether you want to coordinate with him on messaging, or whether you want to handle this completely separately. Because right now, he's fielding questions about your relationship status, your wedding plans, your personal life, and anything he says is going to become part of the public record. Sarah was listening intently. Maya, this is actually crucial. Ex-partners can make or break a public figure's reputation, especially during the early stages of fame. We need to know whether Derek is going to be an ally or a liability. I thought about Derek's emotional state when I'd left the apartment, the way he'd looked when he said he was letting me go. I need to call him. Maya, Sarah said carefully, I need to advise you that any conversation you have with Derek right now could potentially become public. People record phone calls, save text messages, sell private conversations to tabloids. The reality of that hit me like a cold wave. I couldn't even have a private conversation with my ex-fiancé without considering how it might be weaponized against me. But he deserves to know what he's walking into, I said. Derek's a good person, Sarah. He's not going to try to hurt me or profit from this situation. Maybe not intentionally, she replied. But Maya, people say things when they're hurt or angry that they later regret. And in your position, those kinds of statements can have serious consequences. Despite her warnings, I called Derek. He answered on the first ring. Maya, thank God. I've been getting calls all afternoon from reporters. Someone from TMZ offered me $10,000 for an exclusive interview about our relationship. Derek, please tell me you didn't. Of course I didn't, he said quickly. Maya, I'm not going to sell stories about you to tabloids. But these people are persistent. One reporter called my office and told my boss that I was involved with a major tech story, and could they have a comment? I could hear the stress in his voice. Derek, I'm so sorry. I never wanted this to spill over into your life. I know you didn't. But Maya, we need to figure out how to handle this. Because they're not just asking about your business, they're asking about us. About our relationship, our sex life, whether we're still together, whether the money changed you. Sarah was making frantic hand gestures, clearly wanting me to be careful about what I said. Derek, what have you told them so far? Nothing. I've said no comment to everything. But Maya, one reporter told me that someone from your Stanford class is already talking to journalists about what you were like in college. They're building a story about you whether we participate or not. My phone buzzed with another call. Dr. Hawthorne. Derek, I need to take this call, but we should meet tomorrow to figure out how to handle the media situation together. Maya, wait. Before you go, I need to tell you something. I waited. I've been thinking about what happened today, about everything I said. And I realized something. I've been angry at you for succeeding beyond my ability to understand or support. But the truth is, I'm proud of you. I'm proud of what you built, proud of how you handled everything today, proud of the woman you've become." His words hit me harder than I expected. "Derek. I know our relationship is over. I know I wasn't the partner you needed me to be. But I want you to know that when people ask me about you, I'm going to tell them the truth, that you're brilliant, ethical, hardworking, and that anyone who tried to diminish your achievements was wrong." After I hung up with Derek, I took Dr. Hawthorne's call. "Maya, I'm calling because something extraordinary just happened. I've been in academia for 30 years, and I've never seen anything like this." "What do you mean?" "In the last 4 hours, I've received calls from MIT, Harvard, Carnegie Mellon, and Berkeley. They all want to discuss offering you positions, not just faculty positions, but endowed chairs, research directorships, even department head roles." I sat down hard. "Dr. Hawthorne, I'm 29 years old. I don't have a PhD. How can they be offering me department head positions?" "Maya, you've just proven that your practical application of AI technology is worth more than most universities' entire computer science budgets. Academic credentials matter, but results matter more. You've achieved something that most professors spend their entire careers trying to accomplish." Sarah was taking notes frantically, clearly recognizing the significance of what Dr. Hawthorne was saying. "There's more," Dr. Hawthorne continued. "The IEEE wants you to deliver the keynote address at their international conference next year. The Association for Computing Machinery is discussing creating a new award for young innovators in AI, with you as the inaugural recipient. Professional recognition from the most prestigious organizations in computer science. Awards named after me before I'd even turned 30. Dr. Hawthorne, this is happening so fast. This morning I was a startup founder. Now I'm being offered academic positions and industry awards. Maya, that's because what you've accomplished represents a paradigm shift. You didn't just build a successful company, you proved that AI can be ethical, profitable, and socially beneficial simultaneously. That's what everyone in our field has been trying to achieve." After the call ended, Sarah looked at me with something approaching awe. "Maya, do you understand what just happened? You're not just being offered business opportunities, you're being offered the chance to shape the future of artificial intelligence as an academic discipline." I walked back to the windows, looking out at the city lights. Somewhere down there, Derek was probably still fielding calls from reporters, trying to navigate a situation he'd never been prepared for. Somewhere else, my parents were learning to live with security guards and media attention. And here I was, 12 stories above it all, trying to process opportunities that would have seemed impossible this morning. "Sarah," I said finally, "I need to ask you something. In your experience, when someone goes through this kind of sudden transformation, do they usually handle it well?" She was quiet for a moment. "The ones who remember why they started, the ones who stay connected to their original mission, they usually do fine. The ones who get caught up in the fame and forget about the work, they struggle." I thought about quantum flow, about the late nights coding, about the satisfaction of solving complex problems, about the emails from users whose financial lives had been improved by our software. "Sarah, I want to accept some of these opportunities. But I want to make sure that everything I do serves quantum flow's mission of making financial technology more accessible and ethical." She smiled. "Maya, that's exactly the kind of thinking that's going to make you successful in the long term." My phone buzzed with one more text message. This one from Derek. "Maya, whatever happens next, don't let anyone make you smaller than you are. You deserve all of this and more." And for the first time all day, I felt truly ready for whatever came next. The next morning came faster than I expected. I woke up in the Four Seasons penthouse to sunlight streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows and the sound of Sarah's voice in the living room, already coordinating interviews for the day. My phone showed 127 new notifications overnight. Apparently, the tech world never sleeps. I padded out to the main room to find Sarah on a conference call with what sounded like half of Silicon Valley. She held up a finger, indicating she'd be done in a moment, while I poured coffee from the elaborate machine that probably cost more than Derek's monthly salary. "Maya," she said after ending the call, we have some developments. Good ones. She handed me a tablet showing the morning's headlines. Quantum Flow CEO Maya Ashford, the billion-dollar woman changing finance forever. Another read, From Skepticism to Success, How Maya Ashford Built AI Empire While Fiancé Called It Hobby. A third, The Humility Factor, Why Maya Ashford's grace under pressure makes her tech's new role model. The Derek angle is actually working in your favor, Sarah explained. The narrative of being underestimated by people close to you, then proving them wrong with grace and maturity, it's resonating with women especially. Your story is being shared millions of times on social media. I scrolled through some of the social media posts. Women sharing their own stories of being dismissed by partners, family members, colleagues. Men admitting they'd underestimated women in their lives and vowing to do better. Entrepreneurs talking about believing in their vision despite skepticism from loved ones. Sarah, I never intended for this to become a relationship story. I know, but Maya, this is actually powerful. You're not just a tech success story, you're a symbol of what happens when women refuse to be diminished. My phone rang. David Kim, and from his tone, I could tell something major had happened. Maya, sit down. Google's final offer came in an hour ago. $2 billion. The number hit me like a physical force. $2 billion. With my 43% stake, that meant. Maya, are you there? I'm here, I managed. David, that's life-changing money for everyone involved. Your early employees, your Series A investors, everyone who believed in quantum flow from the beginning. But Maya, there's something else. I waited. Sundar Pichai wants to meet with you personally. Not just about the acquisition, about your long-term vision for AI ethics and financial technology. Google is talking about creating an entirely new division around your work, with you as the head. Sarah was watching me intently. I could see her calculating the implications, not just financially, but in terms of platform, influence, and global reach. David, what would that mean practically? It would mean you'd have Google's resources, their computing power, their research teams, their global reach, to scale quantum flow's impact exponentially. You could affect financial decision-making for billions of people worldwide. After I hung up, Sarah was quiet for a long moment. Maya, Google's offer isn't just about money. They're offering you the chance to influence technology policy at a global level. Google executives regularly consult with governments, international organizations, major corporations. If you had a division there, you'd have a seat at tables where decisions are made that affect entire economies. Before I could process that fully, there was a knock at the door. Hotel security announced that someone named Jennifer Walsh from Business Weekly was in the lobby, insisting she had a scheduled interview. I never scheduled any interview with her, I told Sarah. Maya, that's the reporter who showed up at your apartment yesterday. She's been calling my office every hour since then. I thought about Derek dealing with persistent reporters, about my parents having security guards at their house, about how quickly my private life had become public property. Sarah, I want to handle this differently. I want to control the narrative before someone else does it for me. What do you mean? I mean I want to do one major interview, comprehensive, honest, on my terms, that tells the whole story. Then I want to focus on the work, not the media circus. Sarah nodded slowly. That's actually smart. Saturation coverage, then strategic withdrawal. Who do you want to do it with? I thought about it. 60 Minutes. They have credibility, they do in-depth reporting, and they focus on substance over sensationalism. Maya, 60 Minutes reaches millions of people. That's not just an interview, that's defining how America sees you. My phone buzzed with a text from Derek. Maya, saw the headlines this morning. I'm proud of how you're handling all of this. Coffee later? Need to discuss media strategy. I showed Sarah the text. Derek wants to meet. To coordinate our responses to media questions. Maya, that's actually essential. If Derek says something that contradicts your narrative, or if he comes across as bitter or resentful, it could damage your reputation. You need him to be consistent with your messaging. An hour later, I was sitting in a private dining room at the hotel, waiting for Derek. When he arrived, he looked like he hadn't slept. There were circles under his eyes, and his usual confident demeanor had been replaced by something more uncertain. "Maya," he said as he sat down, "this is surreal. I woke up to 17 missed calls from reporters. Someone from People magazine offered me $25,000 for wedding photos. Derek, please tell me you didn't." "I didn't." "But Maya, they're not just asking about you. They're asking about me, about my job, about my family. My boss called this morning and asked if I needed to take some time off to handle the situation." I realized that Derek's life was being disrupted as much as mine, but without any of the opportunities or resources to deal with it. "Derek, I'm sorry. This is affecting your career, your privacy, your whole life." He shrugged. "Maya, you didn't choose this. But we need to figure out how to handle it together, even if we're not together." Over the next hour, we developed what Derek called the unified field theory of not talking to reporters. We agreed on basic facts about our relationship, our breakup, and our respective futures. More importantly, we agreed on what we wouldn't discuss: our private conversations, our intimate life, the specific details of our relationship problems. "Derek," I said as we finished, "are you going to be okay? I mean, financially? If this media attention affects your job?" He smiled sadly. "Maya, I'm going to be fine. I'm a decent marketing manager with good references. I'll find another job if I need to. But thank you for asking." "And personally? Are you going to be okay personally?" Derek was quiet for a long moment. "Maya, watching you handle all of this, the reporters, the business offers, the sudden fame, it's made me realize something. You were always this strong, this capable, this impressive. I just never let myself see it because it threatened my sense of who I was supposed to be in our relationship." His honesty was devastating and healing at the same time. "Derek, you're a good person. You just weren't the right person for who I was becoming. And you were always becoming this person," he said. "I just tried to stop you." When Derek left, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years: complete clarity about my path forward. Not just in business, but in life. Sarah was waiting in the penthouse with more news. "Maya, 60 Minutes wants to do the interview. Anderson Cooper would be the correspondent. They're offering a full segment, prime time, with complete editorial control over the final product. And they understand that this is the only major interview I'm doing? They understand. Maya, this is your chance to tell your story exactly the way you want it told." I looked out the window at Portland, at the city where I'd built Quantum Flow, where I'd been underestimated and dismissed, where I'd proven everyone wrong including myself. "Sarah, let's do it. Let's tell the whole story." The 60 Minutes interview was scheduled for the following week, but in the intervening days, something unexpected happened. The story took on a life of its own. What started as a tech business story had evolved into something much larger: a cultural conversation about relationships, ambition, and what happens when women refuse to be diminished. I was reviewing interview prep materials in the penthouse when Sarah burst in with her laptop, her face flushed with excitement. "Maya, you need to see this. The hashtag #NeverBeSmall is trending worldwide." She showed me the screen. Thousands of women were sharing stories about being underestimated by partners, colleagues, family members. Men were posting apologies to women they dismissed. Entrepreneurs were talking about pursuing their dreams despite skepticism from loved ones. "Look at this," Sarah said, scrolling through posts. "My boyfriend said my food truck idea was stupid. 2 years later, I have 3 locations and he's still working at GameStop. #NeverBeSmall. My father said engineering was too hard for girls. Just got promoted to senior engineer at Tesla. #NeverBeSmall. Maya, your story has become a movement." I felt overwhelmed by the responsibility. "Sarah, I never intended to become some kind of symbol. I just wanted to build good software. But that's exactly why it's working," she explained. You're not trying to be an inspiration. You're just being authentic about your experience, and millions of people see themselves in your story. My phone rang. Dr. Hawthorne. Maya, I'm calling with extraordinary news. The MacArthur Foundation wants to accelerate their timeline. They're considering announcing your fellowship next month instead of waiting for the usual annual cycle. Why the rush? Because your story has captured national attention at a crucial moment for women in STEM. They want to use your platform to highlight the importance of supporting female entrepreneurs and innovators. After the call, I felt the weight of expectations settling on my shoulders. This wasn't just about my success anymore, it was about representing possibilities for other women, other entrepreneurs, other people who'd been told their dreams were unrealistic. Sarah, I said, for the 60 Minutes interview, I want to talk about more than just quantum flow. I want to talk about the systemic issues that make it harder for women to be taken seriously in tech, the importance of ethical AI development, the responsibility that comes with this kind of platform. She nodded approvingly. Maya, that's exactly the kind of substance that will make this interview memorable for the right reasons. 2 days before the interview, I received an unexpected call from Derek. Maya, I need to tell you something. A reporter from the New York Times called me yesterday. They're doing a feature story about you, and they asked me some specific questions about our relationship. My stomach tightened. What kind of questions? About whether I felt threatened by your success. About whether money was a factor in our breakup. About whether I ever tried to discourage your entrepreneurial ambitions. Derek, what did you tell them? He was quiet for a moment. I told them the truth. That I was intimidated by your brilliance, that I handled it poorly, and that you deserved better support than I was able to give you. I felt a mixture of gratitude and sadness. Derek, you didn't have to be so honest. You could have protected yourself. Maya, I've been doing a lot of thinking since all this started. About the man I want to be versus the man I was in our relationship. And I realized that the best thing I can do for you, and for myself, is to be completely honest about my mistakes. That's really brave. It's the least I can do. Maya, when that article comes out, you're going to see some unflattering things about how I behaved. But I want you to know that I take responsibility for all of it. The night before the 60 Minutes taping, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about the woman I'd been a week ago, engaged to Derek, living in a modest apartment, celebrating what I thought was a significant but manageable business milestone. That woman could never have imagined the life I was about to step into. Sarah found me on the penthouse balcony at 3 a.m., looking out at the city lights. Pre-interview nerves, she asked. More like existential crisis, I admitted. Sarah, a week ago I was Maya Ashford, startup founder. Tomorrow, I'm going to be Maya Ashford, public figure. That's a one-way door. Once I walk through it, I can never go back to being unknown. She sat down beside me. Maya, can I tell you something? I've worked with celebrities, politicians, business leaders, people who spent years building their public personas. Most of them struggle with authenticity because they've been performing for so long, they've forgotten who they really are. And you're the opposite. You're being thrust into the spotlight, but you're still completely yourself. That authenticity is your superpower. Don't lose it. The next morning, Anderson Cooper arrived at the hotel with a small crew for the interview. I'd watched him on television for years, but meeting him in person was surreal, a reminder that I was now operating in a world I'd only observed from the outside. Maya, he said as the crew set up equipment, I want you to know that we're not interested in sensationalizing your story. We want to understand how someone builds a billion-dollar company while being systematically underestimated, and what that says about how we value women's contributions to innovation. The interview lasted 3 hours, but it felt like 30 minutes. Anderson asked thoughtful questions about quantum flow's technology, about the challenges of being a young woman in tech, about my relationship with Derek and how it reflected broader patterns of gender dynamics in professional settings. Maya, he asked toward the end, what do you want people to understand about your story? I thought about all the women who'd shared their experiences under #NeverBeSmall, about the young entrepreneurs who'd reached out saying my story gave them courage to pursue their dreams, about the responsibility I felt to use this platform wisely. I want people to understand that this isn't just about tech or business success, I said. It's about believing in yourself even when the people closest to you don't believe in you. It's about the importance of supporting each other's ambitions instead of feeling threatened by them. And it's about the incredible things that become possible when we stop accepting other people's limitations as our own. After the crew left, Sarah was beaming. Maya, that was perfect. You were authentic, substantive, and inspiring without being preachy. That interview is going to define how people see you for years to come. That evening, I received a text from Derek, watched them filming in the hotel lobby earlier. Proud of you for handling all of this with such grace. You're going to change a lot of lives with that interview. And another from Dr. Hawthorne, Maya, the MacArthur Foundation board met today. Official announcement next week. Congratulations, you're about to become the youngest MacArthur Fellow in the program's history. As I prepared for bed that night, I realized something profound had shifted. The woman who'd woken up a week ago celebrating a business milestone was gone. In her place was someone ready to use unprecedented success and platform to make a difference in the world. The transformation was complete. What came next would define not just my career, but my legacy. 6 months later, I stood in the auditorium at MIT, looking out at an audience of 2,000 computer science students, faculty, and industry leaders who had come to hear my keynote address on the future of ethical AI. The woman who had once been dismissed as someone who played with computers was now being introduced as one of the most influential voices in technology today. The 60 Minutes interview had aired to 23 million viewers and became the most watched tech segment in the show's history. The MacArthur Fellowship announcement had followed a week later, making me not only the youngest recipient ever, but the first entrepreneur to receive the honor while their company was still actively growing. And 3 months ago, I had made the decision that surprised everyone, including myself. I turned down all the acquisition offers. Instead of selling Quantum Flow to Google, Microsoft, or any of the other tech giants, I had taken the company public. The IPO had valued us at $3 billion, making me worth over $1 billion personally and creating instant millionaires out of Jenny, Marcus, Dr. Lou, and every employee who had believed in our vision from the beginning. The question isn't whether artificial intelligence will change the world, I told the MIT audience, but whether we'll use it to amplify human wisdom or human bias. The technology we build today will shape society for generations. We have a responsibility to get it right. The applause was thunderous, but what moved me most were the faces in the crowd, young women and men who saw in my story proof that their own seemingly impossible dreams might be achievable. After the keynote, during the reception, a young woman approached me. She looked nervous but determined. Ms. Ashford, I'm Sarah Kim, a sophomore here. I've been working on an AI system to help small businesses predict supply chain disruptions. Everyone tells me it's too complex for a student project, that I should focus on getting good grades instead of chasing unrealistic goals. I smiled, hearing echoes of my own experience. Sarah, show me what you've built. For the next 20 minutes, she walked me through her code, her algorithms, her vision for how the technology could help small business owners avoid inventory crises. Her work was sophisticated, innovative, and potentially revolutionary. Sarah, I said when she finished, this isn't too complex. It's brilliant. Don't let anyone convince you to think smaller. I handed her my business card. Email me your presentation. Quantum Flow has a venture arm now that invests in early-stage companies. I think we should talk. Her eyes filled with tears. Ms. Ashford, you really think my idea has potential? I think your idea could change how small businesses operate globally. The question is, do you believe in it enough to ignore the people who tell you it's impossible? Flying back to Portland that evening, I reflected on how much had changed. The city lights below looked the same, but everything else was different. I now split my time between Quantum Flow's expanded headquarters, speaking engagements around the world, and the Maya Ashford Foundation, which provided funding and mentorship for women entrepreneurs in tech. My phone showed a text from Derek, saw your MIT keynote on YouTube. Incredible as always. Hope you're well. Derek and I had maintained a cordial relationship after our breakup. He'd started therapy, taken a new job at a more progressive marketing firm, and begun dating someone who appreciated his ambition instead of feeling threatened by it. In a recent interview with the New York Times, he'd spoken candidly about his mistakes in our relationship and become an unexpected advocate for men supporting their partner's professional ambitions. The hardest thing to admit, he'd told the reporter, was that I was more comfortable with Maya needing me than with Maya exceeding me. That's not love, that's insecurity disguised as protection. Another text, this one from my assistant, Maya, reminder that you have dinner tomorrow night with the Treasury Secretary's AI Advisory Committee. They want to discuss your recommendations for cryptocurrency regulation. I smiled, thinking about how surreal my life had become. Last month, I'd testified before Congress about AI ethics. Next week, I was keynoting the World Economic Forum in Davos. My calendar included meetings with heads of state, Nobel laureates, and fellow entrepreneurs who were using technology to solve global problems. But the moment that had meant the most to me happened 2 months ago, when I received a letter from a woman named Lisa Rodriguez in Phoenix. Ms. Ashford, she'd written, I saw your 60 Minutes interview and it changed my life. I'd been working on a renewable energy startup for 3 years while my husband told me I was wasting my time. After watching your story, I realized I deserved a partner who believed in my dreams. I left my marriage, found investors who understood my vision, and last month we signed our first major contract with the city of Phoenix. My company is now projected to reduce the city's carbon emissions by 30% over the next 5 years. Thank you for showing me that I didn't have to choose between love and ambition, I just had to choose better. The #NeverBeSmall movement had evolved into a non-profit organization that I helped fund, providing microloans and mentorship to women starting businesses in their communities. We'd supported over 5,000 entrepreneurs in the first year alone, with success stories ranging from tech startups to sustainable farming initiatives to innovative healthcare solutions. As my plane descended into Portland, I thought about the speech I would give next week at the UN Global Innovation Summit. The theme was Technology for Human Flourishing, and I planned to argue that the most important innovations weren't just about efficiency or profit, but about creating systems that helped people reach their full potential. My phone rang. Dr. Hawthorne. Maya, I'm calling with news that's going to sound impossible, but I assure you it's real. I laughed. Dr. Hawthorne, after everything that's happened this year, nothing sounds impossible anymore. The Nobel Committee has reached out through unofficial channels. They're considering creating a new category for technological innovation that benefits humanity. Your work on ethical AI and financial inclusion is apparently under serious consideration. I was quiet for a moment, processing what she'd said. The Nobel Prize. For work that had started with late nights in a coffee shop and a determination to prove that AI could be both profitable and ethical. Dr. Hawthorne, what would that mean? It would mean the global recognition that technology and innovation deserve the same honor as achievements in peace, literature, and science. Maya, you wouldn't just be receiving an award, you'd be establishing a new category of human achievement. After I hung up, I sat in my apartment, a much larger place now, but still in Portland, still close to Quantum Flow's headquarters, and thought about the journey that had brought me here. From a woman whose fiancé joked that she'd never be rich, to someone potentially being considered for the Nobel Prize in less than 2 years. But the real transformation wasn't about wealth or recognition. It was about becoming fully, unapologetically myself. About refusing to be diminished by other people's limitations. About building something that mattered, not just to me, but to the world. I opened my laptop and began writing my UN speech. The future of technology, I typed, isn't about creating smarter machines. It's about creating systems that make humans smarter, braver, and more capable of achieving their dreams. Outside my window, Portland sparkled in the darkness, full of entrepreneurs and innovators and dreamers who were building the future in coffee shops and garages and co-working spaces. Tomorrow, I would visit 3 of them through the foundation, offering funding and mentorship to people who reminded me of the woman I'd been not so long ago, brilliant, ambitious, and surrounded by people who couldn't see their potential. I finished the speech and closed my laptop, smiling at the thought of what impossibilities might become realities next. Because I'd learned something profound over the past year: the only limitations that truly matter are the ones we accept for ourselves. And I was done accepting limitations. The girl who had once feared disappointing others had become a woman who inspired millions not to disappoint themselves. And that transformation, more than any valuation or award or recognition, was the real success story. In the end, it wasn't about proving Derek wrong or the skeptics wrong or even myself wrong. It was about proving that extraordinary things become possible when we refuse to let anyone, including ourselves, make us smaller than we're meant to be. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.